I'm not even sure if I should call it a crisis or crises, because it seems like there's just one layer on top of the other. We have a health crisis, we have an economic crisis, we have a crisis of legitimacy or political crisis, whatever you want to call it, but all of this coming together. And what I'd love to explore and hear a bit from you is, how do these two things to relate to each other? So there's longer term development, this transition, and this short term thing that's happening at the moment. Because I think that's quite extraordinary. And as you said, it can either break us, it can slow us down, or it can accelerate us.
We had to all of a sudden bring people together, create little R&D groups, and then develop tests for COVID, so molecular tests and also antibody tests. And instead of doing this as we are used to do this in 2 to 3 years' time, we had to do it in 6 weeks. And this was a never seen also for ourselves inside the company. And we have adopted HR philosophy of becoming a more agile company. Sounds great, everybody uses this word, but what does it really mean? And now we have the proof point.
Because you had to, right?
We had to.
These two changes, the different perception of the healthcare industry, plus this different way of working under a crisis, is that going to have long-term repercussions? Is that going to change the way you do business?
All I want to say is, let's not assume that now there is a new world and everybody starts thinking in a very different way. There is also a lot of inertia in our way of existing, and I think we should be humble enough to accept that this exists and has also its benefits. But at the same time, I would say, for example, when it comes to the value of testing in healthcare, I have been very vocal and outspoken long before the COVID crisis that we do not invest enough in our healthcare system into sophisticated tests and also in the capacity of running these tests. Because in a country like Switzerland, you are blessed to have this infrastructure of instruments. But go to African countries, for example. In most countries, there's not one single high-performance instrument, not one single. So how do you want to run tests if there is no instrument? And these are the kind of challenges where I think we can have learnings in order to prepare ourselves in a more meaningful way, but also in the developed countries. I think the value of tests as a basis for educated decision-making for therapeutic treatment, this is now in the forefront of everybody. And when I talked about the challenges of our testing business, we need to be, it's not a problem to design a test. The problem is to design 21 billion tests a year, like Roche does. So every human being on Earth, on average, gets 3 tests on Roche machines every year. And every test has to have the same outcome, because you are taking life-saving decisions on the outcome if the number is too high or too low. So maintaining this quality is a tremendous challenge. But if you tell this to people, normally they're not really impressed. But if I'm now talking about specificity of tests, etc., everybody knows, because we have been educating during the crisis. So we have a very different meaning.